Several times in American history, the person with fewer votes was elected president. That's because we're a racist country. But are we? Most recently, in 2016, Donald J. Trump got fewer votes than Hillary Clinton. That is because in the United States, we don't elect our president by popular vote. We elect our president by the Electoral College. And some people say the Electoral College is an old, racist, antiquated system that we should totally do away with. In 2016, Donald Trump got fewer votes than Hillary Clinton, and yet Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. That's because in the United States, we do not use the popular vote to determine who's going to be president. The person with the most votes doesn't win. And there are many people today who believe that system is racist. Why do they believe this? And is it true that this American system is inherently racist? To really understand, we have to kind of backtrack a bit. The Electoral College was developed in the 1700s by the founders of the United States with the intention of protecting smaller states from bigger states. If you got one state with lots and lots of people and one other state that's got fewer people, the larger states could throw around their collective power and, in essence, get their will, and the smaller states be consistently beat out whenever it came to making major decisions at the federal level. The smaller states were concerned that they would have no power or influence on national policy. At the beginning of our country, there was a deal negotiated between the larger states and the smaller states, where the larger states would have more power in some ways. The fact that they have more people gives them the right to have more authority and more influence. And yet the system would allow for the smaller states to still have a significant voice in national policy. And the Electoral College was born. Now, some people will say that the Electoral College was developed by southern states who knew that the northern states would eventually want to get rid of slavery. And so the Electoral College was specifically put in place by racist slave owners in the South to protect their power. But quite frankly, that's just not rooted in historical fact. The reality is that there are actually several states in the North that had very few slaves and very few black people that championed for the Electoral College, namely states in New England. The idea that it was the southern states trying to protect slavery that were championing for the Electoral College, it simply doesn't match the historical record. The Electoral College was developed to protect small states from the larger states. Now, I do recognize that this is an old system. It might be outdated. It's over 200 years old. And in fact, the Electoral College, when it was developed in the 1700s, was largely influenced by a system that came from the 1200s. So it makes perfect sense that some people would want to argue, hey, this is an antiquated system and it's time for us to move on to something else. I think that's a valuable conversation to have. And I certainly think that we might have reached a point where the Electoral College is outdated. However, there are certain things that are really good about the Electoral College. And so people like me are very hesitant to replace it until we have a system that is better than what we currently have and still has the same benefits. If you could propose a system that has the same benefits of the Electoral College, but maybe less drawback, then it would be something worth considering. There's been dozens of proposals put out over the last few years, but frankly, in my opinion, none of them are really all that good. None of them really reserve the benefits of the current system. So what are the benefits of the current system? There are two main ones that I want to highlight. But before I get to that, I want to kind of just touch who are the parties that are trying to change your Electoral College and who are those who are sort of fighting to keep it. The reality is it's totally partisan. No one's being objective here. At least most people are not being objective. Most people are not thinking about this critically. Most people are simply thinking about it in terms of which system is going to help me win. This is evidenced by the fact of how people have thought about the Electoral College over the last 100 years. Throughout the course of the 1900s, the Democratic Party and people on the left wing of America largely benefited from the Electoral College. And so it was a small group of Republicans who really wanted to get rid of the Electoral College and were championing getting rid of this antiquated system. That kind of died down into the 90s. And then the argument sort of was restoked again after the 2000 election. In the year 2000, George W. Bush won the presidency. But like Donald Trump in 2016, George Bush actually got less votes than his opponent, Al Gore. George Bush was a Republican. Al Gore was a Democrat. You know what happened in the light of 2000? All of the Democrats were all of a sudden against the Electoral College, and all of a sudden all the Republicans liked the Electoral College. The reality is that the partisan politics or people's pre-existing positions is informing and influencing what they think about the Electoral College. This has happened several times in American history, where the person with fewer votes won the election. And this has been the case for all of our nation's history. And it's not until recently where a large group of people seem to get really, really angry about it. And it's mostly people who are on the left wing, mostly people who are Democrats, and it's mostly because of Donald Trump. For many years, we'll be talking about Donald Trump and the influence he has had on our country, good and bad. And one of the things that really stoked the national conversation was Donald Trump winning. This man who many people think of as morally bankrupt and totally unworthy of the office of presidency, somehow getting into office with millions of less votes than the person he was running up against. And so people were saying, this is clearly evidence that the system is flawed. If a guy like Donald Trump can get in office without winning the popular vote, that alone is reason enough to get rid of the system. Now, again, I'm willing to have the conversation to examine the Electoral College. I think it's worthy to consider that there might be a better way to elect our nation's president. I'm totally fine with that. But the fact that someone you don't like got into office is not good enough reason to change the rules. Just think about this. If the shoe was on the other foot, what if it were someone that you love, but I didn't like? You wouldn't like me championing a particular idea or proposal simply because I didn't like the person you voted for. Right now, the Republicans love the Electoral College and the Democrats hate it. But that could change. In 10, 20 years, the Electoral College advantage could shift in favor of the Democrats like it was in the 1900s. And my guess is that the parties would switch on their opinions of whether or not we should get rid of the Electoral College. If we were going to get rid of the Electoral College, there are two major benefits. I mentioned this a moment ago. There are two major benefits to the current system. That if we were going to replace the current system, we'd have to make sure whatever the new system is has these two benefits and greater. The first major benefit of the Electoral College is that it forces whoever's going to be president to win over different types of people. The people who live in California are very different than people who live in the Rust Belt, places like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And those people are very different than people who live in the Sun Belt, like North Carolina, Georgia, across the South, through Texas and into New Mexico. The types of voters in these different states care about different things. If you have no Electoral College, if you just go by the popular vote, whoever gets the most amount of votes, well, then the reality is the people running for office, they could totally ignore whole segments of the country. People running for office could simply say, hey, I don't have to care about the blue-collar workers of Michigan. I can just go to California and care about all of the super left progressive types in California and win them over because there's going to be enough of them to help put me over the top. The Electoral College forces candidates to win over different types of people. You can't win by just one group of people. You have to have a broad coalition. The best metaphor that we have that I can come up with that sort of helps explain this is from baseball. I apologize for not a baseball fan, but it's the best one I can come up with. In baseball, to win the World Series, you have to win 4 games of 7 to be crowned champion of baseball. We do not count up the total number of runs across all 4 games. That's not how it works. So it's possible that one team could score more runs over the course of 4 games and yet still lose. Right? A team could win game 1, let's say 10-1, right? So they've scored 10 runs, and then the opponent's only scored 1 run. Well, the next 3 games could, let's say, be 2-1. Game 2 of the World Series could be a 2-1 score. Game 3 of the World Series could be a 2-1 score. And Game 4 of the World Series could be a 2-1 score. Right? We could do that. You could conceivably have a scenario where a particular team has scored, let's say, 14, 15, 16 runs over the course of 4 games and still not won 4 separate games. The reason we do that in baseball is is because we want the team to be able to show that they've been able to win multiple different types of games. In one game, they're going to be playing up against a left-handed pitcher. In the next game, they're going to be playing up against a right-handed pitcher. In one game, they may be playing in one stadium with a short field where it's easier to hit home runs. Or in another game, they may be playing in a different stadium where the wall is further back and therefore it's harder to win by hitting home runs. The reality is the different types of games demand you win in different types of ways. And in baseball, in order to be crowned champion, you have to prove that you can win in different types of ways, not just one way. Now, I recognize that's not a perfect metaphor, and it may even seem silly to you. But I think it sort of gives us some insight into how the Electoral College is designed to work. You can't just win over one type of people or two types of people. If you're going to win the presidency, you have to win a significant chunk of peoples from every demographic. You can't win if you don't win anyone in the Sun Belt. You can't win if you don't win anyone in the Northeast. You can't win if you don't win anyone on the West Coast. You've got to win all different types of people. And this forces the political parties to put forth candidates that will care about all types of people. If you clearly don't care about all types of people, you're not going to win over all types of people. And therefore, you're not going to win the presidency. The Electoral College is designed to be a mechanism that forces the politicians to care about all types of people. And that is a really good thing. As a Christian, I care about people who are potentially bullied or disenfranchised. And if you're a Christian, you should care about that as well. And if we were to get rid of a system like the Electoral College, we would be opening the door to certain segments of people in our country to be more easily disenfranchised, more easily bullied. And as a Christian, I care deeply about that. I want that not to take place in our nation. So if we're going to replace our Electoral College, fine, but you got to make sure you have a system that protects those individuals from being disenfranchised. The second major reason why the Electoral College is actually really helpful is because it makes it really, really hard to cheat and steal an election. Think about it. In a popular vote, if we just went by the total number of votes, individuals could stuff ballots in small towns across California, across the Mountain West, where maybe there's less federal oversight. You could stuff ballots and just run up the score in one individual region or a few regions, and that'd be enough to put a particular candidate over the top. The Electoral College guarantees you have to win multiple different states around the country. And so if someone was going to cheat, if someone was going to steal an election, like has been accused in recent years, those people who are a part of such a conspiracy would have to have multiple different operations around the country. In the United States for presidency, we don't have one election. We have 50 separate elections governed by 50 different jurisdictions, 50 different governing bodies, and 50 different sets of rules. It would be very, very hard to know what states are going to be the ones you can cheat in and set up the apparatus to actually pull that off. Stealing an election with the Electoral College is nearly impossible. Now, I'm not going to say it's totally impossible, but it's nearly impossible. It's extremely difficult. Therefore, if you're going to replace the Electoral College, you got to make sure you replace it with a system where it would be equally as hard to cheat. As a Christian, I believe it's good and right to have free and fair elections. I believe having elections that are honest and righteous is a good thing. And if you're a Christian, you should believe that's a good thing as well. We're going to change the system? Maybe. But we have to ensure that we protect the benefits of the current system. Back to the original question. So is the Electoral College racist? Well, frankly, I think the answer is obvious. Based on the history of why it was developed and the benefits of it, it's nothing to do with race or color or slaves or not slave. That's simply preposterous. With all due respect, anyone who says the Electoral College is racist or was designed to be a mechanism to oppress black people is someone who is dabbling in revisionist history, or they're misinformed, or, frankly, they're just flat out lying. And as a Christian, I value truth. I don't think lying is a good foundation for changing or upheaving an entire political system. We should value truth. And if you're a Christian, you should as well. Hey, if you like this video, hit the like button below, subscribe. If you have a proposal for the Electoral College replacement, put it in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about it.